July 4th. The year is 2026. The world is still. Here is what happened. The United States turned 250 years old today. Americans marked the occasion in ways as varied as the country itself. Parades, festivals, and quiet personal reflection. In Cuba City, Wisconsin, a tradition of presidential lamppost shields dating to the 1976 bicentennial continued for its 50th year. In Georgia, middle school students competed in a civics bee, answering questions about the structure of American government. One student from Georgia advanced to the national finals later this fall. Her grandmother said she feels something different about this anniversary, a sense of togetherness she doesn't often see. More celebrations are planned across the country through the evening. A heat wave struck much of the United States on the 4th of July holiday. More than 165 million people were under record temperatures along the East Coast and Midwest. Several events were canceled, including a major parade in Philadelphia and an Independence Day morning event in Washington. A state fair on the National Mall closed for several hours after at least 11 people were taken by ambulance. Several treated for heat-related illness. The heat is expected to continue through the weekend. Iran began a days-long funeral for its late supreme leader on Saturday. The Ayatollah had led the country for decades. He died at 86, killed in an Israeli airstrike in February. His casket was displayed in a glass case at a grand mosque in Tehran, with family members' caskets placed beneath his. Crowds of mourners filled the mosque, with some chanting calls for revenge and others beating their chests in the Shiite tradition of grief. Iran's government expects millions to pour into the streets before the burial is complete. The last such funeral in 1989 drew enormous crowds. The funeral began on the 4th of July, the 250th anniversary of the United States, as crowds chanted, "Death to America." The President of the United States, speaking in South Dakota at the same time, said his country had struck Iran hard and that Iran was eager to settle. Iran is currently in negotiations with the United States over a permanent end to the war, and the funeral is seen as a moment the government may use to project unity and resolve. Russia has recruited thousands of foreign fighters to serve in its war against Ukraine. Ukrainian officials estimate about 27,000 foreign nationals from more than 100 countries have joined Russian forces since the full-scale invasion began in 2022. Many were recruited from African nations with promises of employment, bonuses, and citizenship, and sent to the front lines instead. Videos on Russian social media show some African soldiers being beaten, abused, and in at least one case, forced toward the front on what appeared to be a suicide mission. Ukraine's foreign minister said Russia uses these fighters in its most dangerous assaults and pays far less in compensation when they die than it does for Russian soldiers. The whereabouts of at least one Kenyan man shown in the videos are unknown. His family says they have not heard from him. Ukraine is now actively warning foreign recruits that they will be treated as expendable. Twin earthquakes struck Venezuela's coast 9 days ago. More than 2,600 people died, and officials are still working to identify the victims. A port storage facility in La Guaira has been turned into a makeshift morgue where families come to search for their loved ones. Bodies lie in rows, wrapped in plastic bags and exposed to the sun, and the heat has made identification difficult. Families are shown more than 1,000 images on screens, looking for a tattoo, a bracelet, or a piece of clothing. Forensic specialists are using dental records where identification is no longer possible by sight. In the coming days, authorities expect the work at the site to continue. More families are still waiting. Rising seas are threatening historic sites along America's coasts. At Jamestown, Virginia, the country's first permanent English settlement, archaeologists are working to recover artifacts before floodwaters reach them. Sea levels there have risen about 1.5 feet over the past century and could rise another 3 feet by the mid-2070s. The James River is eroding one side of the site, and an expanding swamp regularly floods excavation areas on the other. Archaeologists say 5 million artifacts have been recovered so far, with more still buried. And more will be lost if the pace of work cannot keep up with the water. Here is what happened. The world is still.